Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanda Ballava Girivaranari Gopi Chanda Ballava Girivaranari Yashoda Nandana Dvaja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Dvaja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vandachari Yamuna Tira Vandachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Dvaja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vandachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading today from Srimad-bhagavatam, 9th Canto, Chapter 22, verses 21 through 25. I think for the Sanskrit, I think we'll just chant 25, and then I read the translations, all the translations together. So yes, the first 4 verses are together without purport. So this is 25. We'll chant 25 first, and then we'll do translations from 21 through 25 together. The chapter is called The Descendants of Ajamidha. Kshetre Prajashavai Brator Matrokto Badarayanaha Drishtarashtram Cha Pandum Cha Viduram Chapya Jiyanat Kshetre Prajashavai Brator Matrokto Padarayanaha Drishtarashtam Cha Pandum Cha Viduram Chapya Jiyanat Kshetre Prajashavai Brator Matrokto Padarayanaha Drishtarashtam Cha Pandum Cha Viduram Chapya Jiyanat Kshetre Prajashavai Brator Matrokto Padarayanaha Dhritarashtam Cha Pandum Cha Viduram Chapya Jiyanat Kshetre Prajashavai Brator Matrokto Padarayanaha Dhritarashtam Cha Pandum Cha Viduram Chapya Jiyanat Kshetre Prajashavai Brator Matrokto Padarayanaha Dhritarashtam Cha Pandum Cha Viduram Chapya Jiyanat Kshetre Prajashavai Brator Matrokto Padarayanaha Dhritarashtam Cha Pandum Cha Viduram Chapya Jiyanat Kshetre Prajashavai Brator Matrokto Padarayanaha Dhritarashtam Cha Pandum Cha Viduram Chapya Jiyanat Okay, so we'll do word for word. Kshetre, in the wives and maidservant. Aprajasha of Vitra Travirya, who had no progeny. by indeed brought to of the brother, Matra Uktaha, being ordered by the mother, Vadarayanaha, Veda Vyas, Dhritarashtra, a son named Dhritarashtra, Cha, and Pandum, a son named Pandu, Cha, also Viduram, a son named Vidura, Cha, also Api, indeed, Ajiyanat, begot. Translation. Badarayana Sri Vyasadeva, following the order of his mother, Satyavati, begot 3 sons, 2 by the womb of Ambika and Ambalika, the 2 wives of his brother Vichitravirya, and the 3rd by Vichitravirya's maidservant. These sons were Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. Repeat after me. Actually, I was going to let's back up and read all the verses together, and then I'll make it purport. Advanced view. Let's see. This is as far as it goes. Okay. Oh. Oh, I see. Huh. So this was okay. These are the few verses before. So yeah, and then we'll go back to the verse that we're on. There are 4 verses together on the before this that we didn't read. Chitrangada, of whom Vichitravirya was the younger brother, was killed by a Gandharva, who was also named Chitrangada. Satyavati, before her marriage to Shantanu, gave birth to the master authority of the Vedas, Vyasadeva, known as Krishna Dvaipanaya, who was begotten by Parashara Muni. From Vyasadeva, I, Shukadeva Goswami, was born, and from him I studied this great work of literature, Srimad-bhagavatam. The incarnation of God, Vyasadeva, rejecting his disciples, headed by Paila, instructed Srimad-bhagavatam to me because I was free from all material desires. After Ambika and Ambalika, the 2 daughters of Kashiraj, were taken away by force, Vichitravirya married them. But because he was too attached to these 2 wives, he had a heart attack and died of tuberculosis. So in today's verse, which we can repeat, Badarayana Sri Vyasadeva, following the order of his mother, Satyavati begot 3 sons, 2 by the womb of Ambika and Ambalika, the 2 wives of his brother Vichitravirya, and the 3rd by Vichitravirya's maidservant. These sons were Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. Now I can repeat. Badarayana Sri Vyasadeva, following the order of his mother, Satyavati, begot 3 sons, 2 by the womb of Ambika and Ambalika, the 2 wives of his brother Vichitravirya, and the 3rd by Vichitravirya's maidservant. These sons were Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Vichitravirya died of tuberculosis, and his wives, Ambika and Ambalika, had no issue. They had no children. Therefore, after Vichitravirya's death, his mother, Satyavati, who was also the mother of Vyasadeva, asked Vyasadeva to beget children through the wives of Vichitravirya. In those days, the brother of the husband could beget children through the womb of his sister-in-law. This was known as Devarena Sutopati. If the husband was somehow unable to beget children, his brother could do so through the womb of his sister-in-law. The Devarena Sutopati and the sacrifice of Ashvamedha and Gomedha are forbidden in the age of Kali. Ashvamedham Kavolambam Sanyasam Pala Paitrikam Devarena Sutopatting Kalopancha Vivarjayet. Quote, in this age of Kali, 5 acts are forbidden: the offering of a horse in sacrifice, the offering of a cow in sacrifice, the acceptance of the order of sannyas, the offering of oblations of flesh to the forefathers, and a man's begetting children in his brother's wife, from the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, we have an interesting situation here. We have an interesting situation here, this chapter, and it's something which cannot take place in the present age, Kali. So this, so here, Srila Vyasadeva, he has been requested by his mother to give children to the 2 sisters of it, 2 wives of his brother, who at this point had left his body. He had become sick and died, and also to the maidservant of his brother, the maidservant of his brother, and it's interesting. So the 2 wives of his brother, there were two different sons who were born. One was Pandu, and one was Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra was the older of them, but he was born blind. Which we'll probably get into that later on here. He was born blind, so he should have been the next king, but because he was blind, he couldn't really be king. And so then Pandu was actually the king, but there was some other things that happened. And Pandu also, his life ended soon, and so Dhritarashtra still was there as the king, but he was blind. and then from the womb of the maidservant of his brother, Vyasadeva begot one other son, and that son was Vidura. So Vidura was considered, because the maidservant was a maidservant, she was basically Shudra. So Vidura became Vidura was known as far as socially. He was a Shudra. And how did that? What was the point of that? The point was that sometime previous to this time, there was a pastime, we'll call it, when some saintly person, I don't remember his name. Huh? No. Before previous life. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, before, yeah. Okay, there was some person. I wasn't giving out Yamaraj. Anyway, there was some person who was a saintly person. Who had and there were some thieves, right? Who had run and had gotten away and were being chased by the king's men, and they hid in the house of this particular personality. I just don't remember that personality's name right off. And so when the king's men caught up with the thieves, they caught the thieves, but because they were in the house with this particular person, the saintly person, who had nothing to do with them, but because they were there, so they were all arrested, assuming that all three of them were thieves. And this particular person, he was just about ready to be killed, executed by a lance, as probably the other thieves were, because he was just about ready to be killed by a lance. But then at the last moment, the king found out who it was, and he stopped it. So he didn't get killed, but he was just about ready, almost did. And then, but this particular saintly person, which I can remember his name, it's just not coming to mind right now. But anyway, he was apparently pretty powerful, because he went and he immediately went to Yamaraj and saying, "Why is this happening to me? I'm practicing austerities. I'm practicing my spiritual life ever since I was a child. I've never committed any sinful activity in my whole lifetime. So why was I taken there and almost executed?" And Yamaraj said, because when you were a little child, you poked an ant with a piece of grass and you killed the ant. So so therefore you had to go through this difficulty. You were not killed, but you because you were a child, but you were a child, but you were not killed now, but you had to be punished. So that, of course the saintly person thought that was very, I'm just a child. I didn't know any better. So Yamaraj said you have to. So he cursed Yamaraj. Okay, you Yamaraj, because you did this to me, you have to take birth as a Shudra. You have to take birth as a Shudra. Am I getting this right?
Yeah, but also prior, Yamaraj at some point he had a desire to be in Krishna's Lila.
Yes, I'm getting to that. But I'm getting to that. But so anyway, so Yamaraj was cursed to take birth as a Shudra. He had to leave his post as the Lord of Death for some time. But that was Yamaraj was actually a very great devotee. I mean, he obviously he's put in a position there in the universe. Of course, he's punishing the sinful people, but it means he really knows the laws of Dharma. Otherwise, how can he say you were right and you were wrong? You're sinful. You're not. But because he's doing that day and night. That's just like a full-time job. Just you go to heaven, you go to hell, like this. There's really little time in his planet for preaching. He really likes preaching, but because he's a devotee. And he has this very heavy service, you can imagine. So he had a desire for preaching and being part of Krishna's Leela, also. So this was actually some higher arrangement. It had nothing really to do with this person who cursed him. It was just a superficial thing. It was actually just a reason, an excuse for him to take birth as a Shudra. So that Shudra, who was actually a great devotee of the Lord, was Vidura. He was considered as a Shudra because his mother was a Shudra, like that. So that's how he. And then Vidura, of course, had a very big part in the sure in Mahabharata, and of course in the Srimad-bhagavatam, he's also he comes up here. We're reading more, and it'll come. And it was mentioned also in the first canto of the Srimad-bhagavatam. Vidura was because he was a devotee, he was a pure devotee of the Lord, and he was very dear to all the Pandavas. And then and it was Vidura who many times was able to save the Pandavas, because when they were in exile, sometime for many years, this is before the Battle of Kurukshetra, they were in exile, and there were so many attempts to kill them, and Vidura was helping, giving advice and instructions to help protect the five Pandavas and Queen Kunti also, of course. So and ultimately Vidura, when things became very uncomfortable in the kingdom, he just left and he went traveling, and he came in contact with Maitreya Muni, right? And Maitreya Muni, so he accepted Maitreya Muni as his spiritual master, and heard many things from him. There's a large part of the Srimad-bhagavatam about their discussions. And then he traveled like that, and eventually he came back to the kingdom there, and he ultimately gave some good instructions to Dhritarashtra. This was after the Battle of Kurukshetra. Because after the Battle of Kurukshetra, when the Dhritarashtra's whole family was wiped out, as they say, his 100 sons, 100 sons the other day. So he had 100 sons, and they were all killed in the Battle of Kurukshetra, completely annihilated. And Dhritarashtra, of course, was, and of course, Maharaj Yudhisthira had now been established as the king, and the king of the world, and yet Dhritarashtra was being allowed, even though he'd caused so much problem for the Pandavas, he was allowed to stay there and be treated very nicely as a family member, and to stay there in the palace. Yudhisthira was kind to him, in spite of him and his son, especially Duryodhana, causing a huge amount of problem. You can imagine something caused us years and years and years of problem, and were attempting to kill us so many times. And they say, "That's okay. You can stay in our house here. We'll be nice to you. You can put bygones be bygones," as they say. So Yudhisthira was doing that, but Vidura told Dhritarashtra, "You're just like a dog begging at the house, at the home of your master. You should, and you've wasted your whole life like this. Now you should." He preached him very heavily, so heavy that Dhritarashtra, in the middle of the night, just left, and he went off to perform some kind of austerity. Ultimately, he was got some kind of liberation. I think it was impersonal liberation, wasn't it? And his wife, Gandhari, followed him and assisted him up until the end. And then when by his performance of mystic yoga, and his body burned up by itself, then she entered that fire. And of course, Gandhari was also an extremely, she's known as one of the most chaste ladies. Because she when Dhritarashtra, she was to be married to Dhritarashtra, and she found out that he was blind, so she did not want to have any advantage over him, so she blindfolded herself and kept it like that for the whole time they were married. So she was extremely chaste, first-class lady like that, and in the end, she followed her husband to his next destination by entering into the fire, which is what the sati rite is all about. So that's and of course, Srila Prabhupada says he's talking about these five acts that are forbidden. So of course, the offering of a horse in sacrifice or a cow. Of course, those kind of sacrifices, Ashvamedha Yajna and the Gomedha Yajna, I think it's called. They were previously done, not even as the main sacrifice, but they're a way of proving, the Brahmin is proving that they knew the mantras. They knew they could. It meant that it's like saying, here, before we put you here to perform this sacrifice, you have to perform another one before that, you take an old horse or maybe an old cow, and you do the sacrifice and there in front of everyone, that old animal becomes a young animal. Old horse becomes a young horse. Old cow becomes a young cow. And that would be good for the horse and the cow, and it also proved that they were qualified, and that the Brahmanas were qualified, and then they would perform the main sacrifice. So, but of course, in this age, these activities, these kind of sacrifices, cannot be done. Nobody has such qualifications that we can take a cow or a horse and make them immediately transition back into a younger body. Can't do it. All you would do is killing the animal, which of course would be very sinful. So those two activities are not possible. Then apparently there was the offering of flesh to the forefathers, because it maybe there's Shraddha or something. I'm not sure exactly where that was, but that also should not be done. Actually, we read about that in some previous chapter. This is a previous age when it was being done. There were some special circumstances by which it could be done, but it can't be done now. And a man's begetting children in his brother's wife. This is basically, these kind of things go on illicitly anyway, many times, but it's just not allowed in this age. Previously, the people were following Vedic principles. In Kali Yuga, it's just simply, the whole world is disengaging in illicit sex and so on. So this kind of thing, to just have a religious principle that okay, you can mix and match here like that, and it's okay. No, not in Kali Yuga, because nobody has that purity that you can do it. Anyway, these are a couple points in this purport, related to this purport. Are there any questions or comments?
On the sannyas.
Yes, on the sannyas, yeah.
Yeah, the not taking sannyas is very interesting. So, but these guys, like sannyas.
Sometimes that sannyas, not taking sannyas, is also refers to the don't take the Mayavad type of sannyas. Obviously, Srila Prabhupada gave sannyas to many disciples for the purpose of preaching, but other than that, it was not recommended in this age. Anyone else? Okay, if there's no other questions, then I guess we can end today. Most of the verses in this chapter have little or no purports, so we'll probably finish it off very quickly. This section of Srimad-bhagavatam is full of histories without too much explanations about them. So we'll end for today. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.